I'll never forget a particular situation. I was at a show. I go to shows with my work. We'll be going, my wife and I, in Syracuse in August. And you buy a table, I put my photographs, I have a sign, and I have my business cards. This particular, he was a Texan, big, tall, very nice man. And there were maybe 8 or 9 people in front of my table, and he stood up, and they were all standing. I was standing as well, and he was looking, and he said, "I want to ask you a question." I said, "Yes, what is it?" He said, "I understand that most ladies do this work." I said, "Yeah, if you have a dress, I'll put it on for you. I'd be more than happy." I said, "Sir, it really doesn't make any difference." Well, everyone laughed, but a lady or a woman or a man can all push this brush. You're an artist. City, my work since 1955 till '89 that I left New York was graphics, labels, tags, packaging. With the wife insisting that I make a move out of the city, I found this little studio in 1989, and I've been up here. Well, we're sitting at a wedding table this one particular Sunday afternoon, and there is a scenic artist, a very good friend of mine, and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm not doing well." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I have no work." He said, "You never were looking for work." I said, "I understand that, but I moved from the city. I'm no longer in New York." He said, "Look, I'm a clock fancier." He was a scenic artist. He says, "I'm a clock fancier, and I'm building myself a grandmother clock. I would like you to paint the dial. Have you ever done a dial?" I said, "Yes, I've done dials for quart clocks." I finished the painting. And this particular, here's the finished clock here. His name is on the dial. He also asked for that, J. Cerise. And he said, when I finished this painting, he said, "I'm very happy with what you did, and I'm paying you, and I'm going to sponsor you as a member of the National Association of Clock and Watch Collectors." I was accepted in 1991, and I've been doing this work of dial work since 1991. The dial comes in, and it has this void running left to right. The void is meaning that the paint has chipped off. My job at that point was not just putting paint on here to match this color. It had to be a little bit more than that. Again, I would use the paste that I mentioned before with the palette knife, and I built up the void that was running from left to right. Gesso does 2 things. It primes a canvas for you, number 1, and number 2, it gives you the ability to get this raised effect. So with the use of this and the brush, and then the filling in cement that I used to fill this void that took off, and also I'm going to start replacing the spandrel bullets that happen to make up a decorative design here in the center. I'm in the process of restoring this dial. Well, with this dial now, I will be repairing. I've restored the dial as much as I possibly have to. I'm sure anyone that's doing some lettering or some drafting is very familiar with a rapidograph, and the logo is so important. I mean, it's just like clothing stores or eating places. They each have their own logo. Well, surely you just don't want to put down in any block letter the name of the clock. You'd want to put it down in the logo that the clock has been really originated from. These were here, but they were washed away. The painting is beautiful. This dial is over 1830, 1850, coming out of an 1850 tall case clock, grandfather clock. The paintings were magnificently done. These are called the spandrels. My job at the moment now will be to refurbish this gold band that's running along the outer edge. This morning I'm working in gold, but I have a palette. I use the cartridges of film cartridges that are empty, and I present myself with reds and cerulean blue and some beautiful greens and ultramarine blue and browns and ochre. And with this combination, I feel that I can just move along. These brushes are Winsor Newton or Grumbacher, and they sell for approximately $20 a brush. And if you care for them very well, which I do, and I pride myself in that, so I'm not buying brushes every month. The last thing I do at night before I close the light to go home, they're dipped in glycerin. And the glycerin will retain that perfect point that you see here. If not, the brush will look something like, and I'll give you an example of what it could look like. It'll look like somebody whose hair is all wet. They'll look like this, and then you have to wait a while until you get that perfect point. So the last thing to do after they've been cleaned thoroughly, even if I have to use some detergent, I dip them in the glycerin and then put them to sleep. And I would say my job of restoration is finished. I started this last week, and I'm just about complete. He'll get a phone call. Hopefully I'll get paid, and then come into the next job. Yes, I said, what is this? He said, well, it's called the moon dial. And what am I to do? He said, well, whatever is left on here, which was very, well, it was a little more than what you see here now. He said, you're going to scrape it down, and you're going to redo this. And what they usually are, you'll find a land scene and a water scene. Land scene, water scene. Here's a particular clock called the St. Thomas Lunar. There's an open arch here. This dial will be behind this arch. And here she is again with a castle and a water scene, telling us the phase of the moon at that particular time. If it's a full moon, if it's a half moon, a quarter moon, and so on. What would you like? I would like a ship, all right? Or I would like a lighthouse. He was satisfied, and I was satisfied with the reward of payment. And then there's something called reverse painting. I never did a reverse painting. These tablets go into clocks, wall clocks especially, shelf clocks as well, and the reverse painting is a favorite of that particular design clock. And they usually are done in 3 colors. A black holding line, International Time Recording Company. Well, reverse painting. So I turned the head around a little bit and I said, well, you're doing it backwards. It should be easy for me because my wife said I drive backwards. But nevertheless, you're doing it backwards, so let's just take the simplest thing to think about, a bird in the sky. You'd put the bird first, and then paint the sky. Yeah, that would sound correct. Because if I paint the sky, I'll never be able to scratch out where I want to put this bird. Many mistakes in misspelling. Many mistakes. That's all part of the game. And it's a game, but here's something interesting. I would say it's interesting. June 23rd, 1992. Mr. McCara, I've enclosed a St. Thomas dial, which you had refinished last October. and which my customer and I are very pleased with. After all this time, this was June, and I got this back in October. So after all this time, the customer recently noticed that the 12 was not complete, missing the numeral 1. Please complete the missing digit and return the dial. If there is a charge, advise and I will remit. The customer is most anxious to have this corrected as soon as possible, and I thank you for the expert services provided in the past. Old Time Clockmaker, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Well, let's take a look at the 12. This is a Xerox of the dial. I left room for the 1, but I never put the 1 in. The phone could have rang, somebody may have walked in, I'm not sure quite what happened. So I had to put the 1 in back to create a 12. And this man wrote back and he said, you know, McCary, he said, you did a very nice job on the dial. He said, but unfortunately, it's not New Heaven, it's New Haven. So I misspelled it. Yes, those things happen. Classical music. I love classical music. I've been listening to a particular station, WQXR, for over 50 years. 96.3, and that's my station. Yes, I have favorites, such as the Romantics, Rachmaninoff, Delius, Frederick Delius. I also like the violence and the feeling of nature that Beethoven could allow us to listen to and really bring you out of wherever you be sitting or walking at that time, but you're listening to his music. And then Mozart is the champion, there's no question about that. And the ballet music is very lovely. And as far as the Italian opera is concerned, well, Puccini, Verdi, they are really the strong points in my life. So I heard that music since I was a young boy. Oh, my favorite time of day is the cocktail hour, which if I get home by 5 o'clock, it's either a martini or a Manhattan. That is my joy. When I was a boy, coming home from school, I look forward to my mom giving me a glass of milk and cookies. But now, as an adult, I can't wait to get home. And during the day, it gives me thought, what will it be tonight? A Manhattan or a martini? And by the time I arrive home, I usually have made up my mind. So that's my favorite time of day. I have something written here, and I wouldn't be able to memorize it, but I really believe it was this. It's called Divine Providence. It is in accordance with the economy of divine providence that whenever God designs any person for some important work, He bestows on that person the graces and disposition necessary for faithfully discharging it. And I really feel that I was praying a lot to get busy. I had no work, and I've been busy ever since 1955. If you aspire to use the talent that God gave you as far as painting is concerned, well, never forget the brush. The computer, I know, is a valuable tool, but use your brush, use your pencil, watch, look, and utilize your talent, and be happy with what you're doing.
Thank you very much.